the Lord, everyone. I first want to thank God for giving me the opportunity to stand before you today. You may be seated. Thank you. I also want to greet everyone that is in the congregation today. I want to greet our pastor, Pastor Stewart, Sister Esther, and also Sister McLean. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak to everyone. I'd like to thank my family that is here. Thank you for your love and your support. And of course, Pastor Denise, my husband as well, who is here. I won't be long before you today, but I pray that what I have to say will be a blessing to someone or will encourage someone in the congregation. So I'm just gonna get started. So today is New Year's Eve. If everyone has noticed, it's December 31st. And at this time of the year, a lot of us, we think about the year that has passed and the year that is to come. So usually you're reflecting on what the past year had to give. So for 2022, you might be thinking that it was a year of change or challenges. It might have been a fun year for some of you or very prosperous. And you're thinking of the year to come, which could be anxious, can make you anxious sometimes, excited, nervous. You're not really sure what the year is going to bring, but we're all thinking about it at this point. And usually this time of year, a lot of people, they want to make a change in their life. They want to make a New Year's resolution or some form of it. They want to make a positive change. And we always hear like the cliche, new year, new me, making changes. And that's a good thing. Usually you want to make corrections. You want to always look for ways to improve. And especially as believers, we should be always reflecting on our lives and looking at how our lives are reflecting God and how we want to change. But a lot of the time, sadly, whenever resolutions are made, we don't follow through with it. So you'll keep going through March or maybe even February, and then you fall off. Like you don't commit to what you said that you were going to commit to. And when this happens, you end up staying in the same place where you were before because you don't stay committed to what you said you wanted to do. It could be because you're second guessing your goals or your goals weren't clear enough, or you just get weary and you say you don't want to do it anymore. You just give up at some point. And so thinking of the word resolution, it made me curious about what it actually means because it's used so commonly to make goals. And two definitions came up. The first one is a firm decision to do or to not do something. And the second one is the quality of being determined or resolute. And so what stood out to me was the word determined, because when we make these goals, we have to be determined to continue them on. And so if we're not meeting these goals, that means that there's an aspect of us not being determined, and therefore we're not meeting our resolution. And so we have to be determined to see our change happen. So my topic for you today is how determined are you? So the Bible is covered with examples of determination, which brought about change or positive outcomes to either the people that were impacted by this determination or nations. So today I want to highlight two people that stood out to me and speak a little bit more about how their changes came about. So the first person that I want to speak about is Job. I trust that we're pretty familiar with his story, but I'll give a brief overview of it, and this might give you a different perspective. So Job was blameless and upright, and he feared God and shunned evil. He was living a very well life, pleasing before God, and he was also blessed by God. He had riches, he had a wife, children, friends, he had a lot of possessions. He was very prosperous, to say the least. One day, Satan showed up and told God that he had been roaming the world, and God mentioned Job's name to Satan. And Satan told God that if he was to take away everything that Job had and was to take away all of his possessions that he had in this world, that he would curse him. And God allowed Satan to test Job, basically, because Satan was pretty much saying, if you give him everything that he wants, of course he's going to be happy to serve you, because he has everything that he could think of wanting in this world. So he's going to be on your side. But what about if you took that all away? He probably won't be on your side. So God told him to try it then. And we should also take a moment to think about God's confidence in Job. Job was a normal human, just like you and I, and yet he was confident that Job would continue to remain on his side and remain faithful to him. And so we should take a moment to think about, is God that confident in the way how we're presenting him to the world? Would he bring our name up if it came to the test? Because Satan didn't bring up Job's name, or no one else did. It was God who brought up Job's name to him. So when it came to the test, Job lost all of his children, his possessions. He lost his health. He lost the support of his wife and his friends. And it was a really rough time, to say the least. I mean, I think if one of those things happened to us, it would be very, very hard for us and could bring someone to a breaking point. He went through all of these things all at the same time. And through everything, Job was still faithful and determined to serve God. In Job 1, verses 20 to 21, it says, "Then Job arose, rent his mantle, shaved his head, and fell down upon the ground and worshipped, and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." And this is what Job did right after he heard that all of his possessions were ruined and his children were killed. So that is the magnitude of determination that Job had to serve God. Also in Job 27, verses 3 through 4, it says, "As long as I have life within me, the breath of God in my nostrils, my lips will not say anything wicked, and my tongue will not utter lies." So you can see that Job had determination no matter what. Even when his friends did not support him, even when his wife did not support him, he was still determined. His goal was to be on God's side, and because he remained faithful and determined, in turn, he received a change to his situation. God restored all of Job's fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. The Lord also blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the first. So that's showing that because Job stayed faithful to him, he received more blessings than he had even before. And remember, before, he was very rich and prosperous and had everything that he could think of. So he got double that towards the end of his life. And he was blessed, and he lived to be 140 years old, which is, I mean, a big blessing, because you don't hear that very often. And so that is an example of how determination can bring about a change that you're looking for. The second person that I'd like to speak about is the unnamed woman with the issue of blood. If you turn to Mark 5, verses 25 to 34, you'll see her brief yet resounding mention in the Bible. So I'm just going to read that. It says, "And a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing better, but rather grew worse, when she had heard of Jesus, came in the press and touched his garment. For she said, If I may touch his clothes, I shall be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press, and said, Who touched my clothes? And his disciples said unto him, Thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and thou say, Who touched me? And he looked around about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him, and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace and be whole of thy faith. So we see in this story that this woman was suffering with her sickness for 12 years, which is a very, very long time. Not only had she been suffering for 12 years, but she couldn't find an answer to why she was suffering. And what made the situation even more difficult is that she was getting worse, not better. It wasn't staying the same, it was getting worse as time went on. She was so desperate that she wanted to see a change, and she believed that Jesus would heal her. She was so desperate that she at least wanted to touch something that was touching Jesus's body, because she believed that just touching that thing would make her whole. So what seemed insignificant to those people around Jesus, she saw the significance of it. He was in the middle of a crowd with people next to him, touching him, to the point where when he said that someone touched him, it sounded strange to his disciples, because they said, of course someone touched you, you're in a crowd. But she saw the significance of being in the presence of God so much that she was happy to even touch something that was touching his body. And she saw that it was very important to be in such close proximity with God. So she was desperate and determined to push through the crowd to touch Jesus. And this is also an example of what determination can do for you, because when you're determined to see a change, it doesn't matter what it takes to get your change, you're willing to push through it. She was not concerned about the danger of pushing through a crowd. When you push through a crowd, you're posed with so many different dangers that can happen. You could be hit, you could be stepped on, you could even be trampled, which could very much endanger your life. And yet she did not consider any of that. She just wanted to make sure that she was able to touch the hem of Jesus' garment that he had on. So she had faith that God would bless her, and that he would bless her with the life that she wanted, which was the healing that she was looking for. That was going to give her the life that she wanted. And so this shows and also an example of how determined we should be to be in God's presence as well. We should have that determination and that desperation to be in his presence, because he is our source. It also makes me think about the oxygen that we're breathing. And I remember also our pastor mentioned it, like when you have asthma or when you're gasping for air, you become desperate. Like it's a very scary thing if you're not able to inhale, something that we take for granted because it's just like second nature. We don't have to think about it. You just inhale and exhale. But if that oxygen was cut off, I'm positive that everyone in here would be determined to find a way to breathe again, because you would be concerned about losing your life and you would be very uncomfortable. And in that same way, we should be determined to be in God's presence and to be connected to him, because he is our source. The same way that oxygen is our source to breathe, he is our source for everything. He is our sustenance. And so we should be determined to be in his presence always. We also see that when you're determined, you get the change that you've been working towards. If you give up, you're not going to receive that change. A brief example of when I was determined was when I was in labor with my son. So I'm a new mother, and I know other mothers out there can relate with me, but that's probably the worst part of it all. It's very, very painful, and every hour seems like it's been 10 hours instead of 1. And you're really leaning on God's mercies and your mind to help you get through that situation. And at that point, when it was time for him to be born, I was in so much pain that I was determined to make sure that I saw his face. Like I didn't care what else had to happen. I just wanted to make sure that I saw his face. And that's how we should be for God. We should be determined to want to see his face no matter what happens. We want to make sure that we see it. So a lot of the time, our determination, when we set goals, they fizzle out because, like I mentioned before, we second guess ourselves because we doubt ourselves, or We sometimes think we're not worthy of the change that we're looking for. And we have a lack of faith in that. And the thought of something new also brings about fear. So sometimes you don't want to change because you're fearful of what that change might bring. And it's natural for a human to be afraid of the unknown. But we have to remember that God has a purpose for us. And we have to be thinking about who God wants us to be. We also have to remember that God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So that should also help us whenever we're afraid to see a change through. We should always cling to those words to know that God has given us power and love and a sound mind that will allow us to push through and get to our goals. Isaiah 41 verse 10 says, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God, and I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness." So whenever you're doing something new, keep this in your mind, that God is with you and that he will help you push through anything. He will help you push through fear that is crippling you. He will allow you to make any change that you want to make in your life. Proverbs 16 verse 3 also says, "Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts will be established." So this means that if we focus on him and we allow him to take over, he will make sure that our plans work out. And he will make sure that we're successful in all that we do. So we have to make sure that we keep that in mind as well. He's going to establish our thoughts. So the visions that you have for yourself, the future that you see, God is going to allow that to come to fruition if you stay determined and if you keep him at the forefront of your mind in everything that you do. And to conclude, sorry, I didn't tell you I wouldn't be too long today. But to conclude, I like to say that if you want to attain a goal and make a positive change in your life and become a better person, whatever that might mean to you, and of course, based on God's word, then you have to start with God. Amen. He's the only one that can really bring about true change in you. He will give us the ability and strength to move forward in anything that we want to do. If you have a goal or if there's anything that you want to see change in your life, you can make that change if you connect with Jesus. Amen. If you feel stuck, God can make you see clear again. Yes. Faith goes hand in hand with determination as well. So start working towards what you prayed for, because it's going to come if you pray for it. You have to show God that you're ready for what you prayed for, and you have to start working towards it. So, for example, if you're asking for a new car, but you don't have your license, and it's like, how likely do you think it is that you're going to get a car? You have to, I mean, you could get one, but you won't be able to use it. And so you have to start making steps towards getting that car. So you should prepare yourself, get your license, get some experience driving, save your money, do things, look up ways that you can get this car, because God said that he will bless you with what you asked him for. And so you have to have faith that it's going to come to you. And so you work towards it while you're waiting for your blessing to come. And so you can implement new habits any time of the year. You don't have to wait for New Year's. You don't have to wait for New Year's Eve. Wait for Sunday or Monday to roll around. You can start on a Wednesday. You can start anytime that you want to make a change. All you have to do is just start. And when you go through a rough patch, you have to be determined to connect to God, and you have to be determined to see your goal through. And once you are determined, then you will receive the change that you've been looking for. These are my 3 words.